Well, I've come in garage today because, well, I had a number of things to tell you, but I can't remember what they were. I did say to myself, I'll write them down, and then when I do my video, I'll go over them, but I can't remember what they are. Finn has developed a bit of a peculiar habit of having a post-entry and exit window wipe for some reason or other. I'll show you a bit of a video of that. And I've tried to do it today, but for some reason, because I've disconnected, you can't love them, haven't you? Because I've disconnected my phone from Bluetooth so that I can record volume, it's not doing it. So what's happening is every time you close one of the front doors, the window wipers come on. Apparently, only if you've got your phone connected. Go figure. And again. Anyway, I'm quirky little things, aren't they? My dad had one. My dad had a Series 2 8 years ago, and it had all sorts of little finicky things. He had a little main beam switch on the floor that you tap with your foot, you know, to switch the main beams on and off, and sometimes you could switch the main beams on when the lights weren't on, and all sorts of things, and it was just one of them things anyway. So Finn started doing some sort of rum things like that. There's something else I wanted to tell you as well. I can't just think what that were. Anyway, it doesn't matter for now, because what I'm here for is I've come to do service. So another oil change is due. It's a bit of a rum sort of situation, really, because, as you know, I like to change oil every 5,000 mile. But I have been considering changing Finn for a D5, and you'll see the reasons in previous videos. Me 6-month review and my off-roading review. Both of those identified that there were some issues with the Defender that don't seem to be sort of right somehow. In particular, there's a bit of a drama where the power is being cut when you need it for banks, and that's very problematic off-road, and I think it's related to this third gear drama that I'm experiencing, which is very uncomfortable. Anyway, I went up Edmonton this weekend, drive a D5, a diesel, and it's quite a long way up to Edmonton. It's many miles, and so off we trotted up there. But because we had going weekend, because that's the time that everybody's got off, I didn't get a chance to do my oil change before, and now of course there's another 1,000 miles on it since then. So, and I've been up once already. Any road, I'm late, basically, is what I'm saying. But Land Rover's interval is 22,000 miles. And I think that's a bit excessive, so I'm going to change it again. It's got about 7,000 miles. He's running at the moment. You can probably just see here in back. Look, you can happen here that he's running. Well, he's running in back because I'm trying to warm oil up, you see. You've got to change oil at a room temperature, so not room temperature, but operating temperature, or just under. And last time what we did was we pulled it from the top, if you remember rightly, and I did promise that I was going to record a video and outdo it like the old-fashioned way, which is, you know, sort of dropping sump, not sump, but you know what I mean, sump plug. But that's a bit of a problem, and I'll show you why now. You've got to take this cover off here, you see. Come on, gimbal, there you are. You see this big aluminium shield underneath here, look? Well, you've got to take that off in order to get at the sump. So that means that the car's got to be more in the air than what it is. Now, obviously, this is just access height, isn't it? Because you can see here we haven't actually got a lot of ground clearance here, and I'm going to just jack it up with these ramps. And normally I like to have 4 ramps. I've only got 2 there, as you've noticed. And previously I haven't been able to get my car in the Land Rover in garage and jack it up. Now you can just see here we might just have a bit of room. I'm going to measure it before I do, and then I can get a second set of ramps here, because then you can get it all level and more height, and it's better then, because the sump has the bung somewhere probably at the back, I would think, and you've got to run it at a bit of an angle, not too much, or else it'll catch, if you see what I mean. But I don't know, because I can't remember what it was like last time. I have done it once, the old-fashioned, the hard way. There's Jip, look, aren't you? Hey there, Jip. There you are, lad. Come on, come and say hi to everybody. They all like you very much. They think you're the star. Sit. They think you're the star of the show. Yes, no, sit. You've got to sit. You've got to sit there. I can't get you. Yes, you are. Everybody says you're the star of the show. Up you go. Up. Jip. Up. There you are. Yeah, star of the show, aren't you, Jip the Magnificent? There we go. Look. Fluffity puppety, aren't you? So Jip's going to help, aren't you? You're going to do some of the tail sweeping for get the floor clean. All right, I've brought you here, look, because I was going to drive up these ramps, and I just wanted to give you a bit of a tip here. Because this P400's all revvy and annoying, if you try and do it in first, it's horrible. First gear high range, it's horrible. So what I've done is I've engaged low ratio here, which you can see, and I have locked it. I had locked it. Where is my gear here? I am going to lock it in third, so we've got a very steady application of power here. It's the only way to stop this vehicle from spinning out, because the P400's revs are the torque's right up somewhere near 2,000 or 2,500. It's far too revvy, and you don't get any sort of control for delicate manoeuvres. This is one of the things that we were talking about when we did the video, the off-road video, is that it's not progressive. You can't work with it progressively, if that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is, you can see how I've got it set up now, and we're just going to roll steady up these ramps, and you can see now I've just started to bite, and you can see that car sort of stopped moving because this is on brakes. So now we're sort of resting on the ramp, so I can use my throttle now to sort of roll up a little bit, and you can see as I go up, I just crest my brakes a little bit, and it sort of stops where I want it to. Even in third gear, it's not as comfortable as I'd like it, if you know what I mean. Oh, where are we now? Yeah, that should be about right now. We'll just put that in park here, and we'll just pop out and have a look to make sure that we're in the right place on the ramps. And you can see now I'm in the proper place on the ramps. I've hit the stop, and now what we can do is we can put it in raise mode. I'm only going to use the two because, like I just said earlier on, I've measured it up, and if I put it on ramps at the back, it'll not work. It'll get trapped. So now I've set that to go up into off-road height. There it goes, and the back's gone up as well. Ramps are making some funny noises. Now I should have, all things being considered, I should have enough space here to get underneath. Now, as is always the case when you've got the vehicle sort of up in the air, or at least in a precarious position or something, and you're trying to work on it, it's very important that you chock the back wheels, or our wheel at least. Of course, I've got the handbrake on, and it is in park, so we've got a transmission brake and we've got an axle brake, and now we've got a chock as well, so vehicle should not move one way or the other. Jip's always terribly interesting when there's something going on, aren't you, Jip? You're always very excited about mostly with the potential for going out somewhere and doing something very interesting. It's not quite as interesting as it needs to be, is it, Jip? But I've done my best here so that we can try and I can try and film what I'm about to do. We did have a bit of a drama because I've lost one of my reducers, so we had to crack it with a big bar, and then we're going to use this Milwaukee tool to wind them out, because I must have nipped them up a bit too tight last time. Trust Stephen. Okay, so it turns out that you have to take that bottom plate off altogether. This control unit here is part of the electronic steering. As you can see, it's fastened to the steering rack that sort of goes all the way through, and then underneath here you've got some sort of differential mount, I suppose. I don't know what that would be, some sort of weird differential mount. And then of course you've got the differential with a fairly nice and accessible series of drain bungs and level bungs, so that's nice. Now this unit in front, that there of course is the sump, and the plug we're taking off is here. Now you can see obviously what's going to happen is this is going to come further forwards, and I've not helped myself here because I'm at a slight angle on the way back, but you can see, well, you perhaps can't, but it's quite level as it is, even though it's up in the air. So I have a feeling that there's a bit of a taper on this sump to drag it sort of forwards anyway. Up underneath here you've got a big 48 volt starter motor and some exhaust stuff here off the big P400, and then up there you've got a bunch of sensors. Now the reason I'm showing you this is because whenever you start to do a job like this, you should always have a look underneath to see if anything's coming loose, or is starting to drop off or rub through, or all these sorts of things that can potentially happen. It is a Land Rover, so you never actually do know, do you? And so just have a good look around while you're poking about underneath. Just check the belts so you can see that there's no wear on the belts or anything. And then up here, that thing there, that's sort of an electronic supercharger. And that's got to do with the 48 volt system too. Look at the size of that earth strap there. So just have a look to make sure that nothing's coming loose, or nothing's sort of wandering off and doing its own thing, or rubbing or whatever. And looks like there's a bit of movement on that gasket there, can you see? It's not my favourite, but it looks like it's in position. Nevertheless, it's still, you can see on this right hand edge there, there's a bit of boss showing, and I'd prefer that was all over the thing rather than now it is. But it's a very interesting thing to look at these new engines to see all the stuff that they've got going on, because it is it's new technology from what we're used to in the past. We're used to different things. Look at that magnesium or whatever it is, sort of cross member a unit there at the side of where that radiator goes. I have had some drama right up there. I have had some drama with coolant going missing. I think I've mentioned this before. When I first got the car, I had the low coolant warning and I had to put some in, but I have had a look at the water pump, which is right in front of us, and there doesn't seem to be any leakages or anything, which is always nice to see. There's a bit of watery junk up there, isn't there? But anyway, that's it. But where we're at here, of course, is we're talking about this bung gear and dropping some oil, aren't we? That's what we've got on today. So what I'll do is I'll get me sump drain thing, and we'll drain some oil. But actually, before I do that, I should mention to you that lower engine plate is mounted with two bungs here, two little. You can see the holes here. They're these. I'll just pop this somewhere. Where can I put this? I'm not used to so many magnetic points on my Land Rover. They use these sort of clips, these sort of super stupid affairs. And here's one that I pulled apart and pulled out properly, but they don't hold in very well into there. You sort of have to push them in and then push them in again. But you've got pull this piece down here, because underneath here you can see there's a hole. Well, that's where one of the bolts fastens for your front bash plate. And the bash plates have they've got some thickness to them. You can see it's here. Look, they've got some thickness to it. It's not going to take a massive impact, but there's something there. And here is again that damage that has been caused by, I don't know what it's been caused by, but I don't rate this stuff. I don't actually know what it's for. Maybe it's for quiet deadening or something. I don't actually know what it's for, but it's it's perhaps stock water stuff going up, and there's clearly something heat related here. Look, there's something riveted in. There isn't that on the other side. Anyway, let's get the jug underneath and drop some fluid. Now, I've never really been a fan of draining oil this way, because in my experience it just goes everywhere. But for purpose of the demonstration, you have to do what you have to do, don't you? I have got a fresh one of these. I'm going to show you here. Look, this is the number LR073675, and that is the that's the new sump plug, I suppose, with the new washer, and it give you the old lot. I don't normally change these at the same time, but I always have one just in case, and the thing doesn't go back in and doesn't seal properly. Now, this is a 13mm affair, and changing it is going to be a bit of a drama. As you've noticed, we're already leaking. And we know that this holds all the oil on the planet. And it has been hot, and it is hot, because I can feel it. There we go. That went relatively well. Now, it does, just when it gets a bit low, it starts to dribble out there, as you can see at the back, so you won't bear that in mind when I might have spillaged here a bit more than I'd like to, but now you can see it's not clean, is it? It's only had 6,500 miles on it. Before we do anything, just make sure that this filter is good to go. I've used these before, look, and they're a very simple filter. Just have these two chaps at the end that you need to take care of. Put a drop of oil on those, and then that drops in. Well, that's interesting. What do you suppose that is? Have we had mises? There's another piece here, look. Looks like we might have had mises. This is the cover that houses the holder for the oil filter, and so this we have to remove, and to do that we need a big socket. Now, to remove this, you need 1 1/16". And before I release the oil, I always take out the filler plug, because that way that'll allow air to flow through the engine and release a little bit more pressure to let the fluid flow out underneath. That allows this to sort of dribble back in on itself rather than all over everywhere. But in my experience, nothing stops it going everywhere anyway. Well, very little does, so just have to be a bit careful. I'm going to try and do this for you while you can see. So that's actually pretty good, look. Now let's have a look at this filter. You saw I changed this quite recently, and you can see that it's this green O-ring here is nice and clean. And there is a little bit of oil around the seal, so we'll just wipe that off to stop it dripping on everywhere. Oh, there we are. So that's nice and clean. Well, let's have a look at this oil filter, because it looks quite dirty to me and hot. Now that don't look good, does it? Look at that. There's heat deformation here, fluid deformation of the filter, and it's very, very fuzzy. I don't know if you can see it, but it's very, very fuzzy. Not clean in any way whatsoever. It's not so bad here, but it's ready for changing, isn't it, I would say. So here we are, look. Here's the old filter, and here's the new one, and you can see it's not well, is it? So this is after only 7,000 mile, and they recommend 22,000 mile. So I'll let you figure out what you think of that. Now I have got there from Agat Laboratories, you can just see the box. That is a testing sample kit for the oil, and I'm going to send it off and we're going to see just exactly what the story is with it. This, I'm pretty certain, if you look at it, pretty certain we've got mesas. There you are, look, can you see a little mouse house? So we have had mesas at some stage, and there's a bit of a feather there, so that hasn't taken long, has it? Now, when it comes to reinstalling this, I've done all this before. We should appropriately change this green seal on here, and we replace that with a fresh one, which should come in the box, and it does. So buried away at the bottom of the box is a new seal. We'll just take that off now. A lot of folks say that there's no point in pre sort of oiling these things these days because the seals are good enough, but I don't see how these sorts of old tools, old techniques, I don't see how they do any harm as long as you're not wiping terrible stuff over them or acidy things or whatever. And so I'm just rubbing a little bit of oil on here, and then this chap here we can pull off. Just get my finger underneath it, pull that off, and there's the old one. I'll put that on the bench, and this is the new one. I'll put this on, making sure you don't snag it on that and put a micro tear in it. Just roll this gasket back over the thing, give it a touch of a spin to make sure that it's seated nicely, and then you can take your new filter, and in the end of here there is some oil and a bit of a housing, and so you just pop that into there like this and give it a push until it goes home, and you can feel that, and then take a little bit more engine oil, being careful not burn your fingers on this very hot engine oil. Just rub a little bit of fresh oil over these two seals, just so that they don't bind and snag. I mean, it's fairly lubricated in there, but I take my cloth and just clean that up because I don't like engine oil everywhere. Being careful not to wipe it off that green O-ring. Just pop the thing in there. Now I always give it a bit of a spin anti-clockwise, just so I know that it's seated nicely. Can you see? And it does have a bit of a tendency to want to wobble about, but if you just give it a bit of a twist anti-clockwise, and then you know that it's seated right. Now there is a torque spec for this, and I would advise you to use the torque spec, but so there is a torque spec and it's right on the top. It's very important not to over tighten it, and 25 Newton meters isn't much. For instance, your wheel nuts are 100 Newton meters, and so I don't actually have a torque wrench, but anyway, 25 Newton meters isn't much. If you wound it in too hard, you'd end up splitting the casing and pulling the threads. As the engine gets hotter, it pulls on those threads as it stretches. Now here you can see this little chap here is full of dust, and I don't like that because I don't want the dust in the engine, so I'm just going to take this out now and give it a wipe off with my cloth, just so all my areas are clean before I start dropping oil in it. Now I know that I haven't put the bung back in the bottom yet, and that is something that I've got to do before I start pouring the oil in. But what I'm going to tell you now is, if you don't mind wasting a bit of oil, I always like to put in a bit just to wash the existing dregs out, because it just helps to flush the engine out with the old engine oil and get rid of it altogether, if that makes sense. I've had a very close look at this bung, and it's still in very good condition. The most important thing is hard to see in this light, but this rubber O-ring that sits around the outside, and what you want to look for is any notches or cuts or dents in it, and this one looks pretty fine. This is going to be one of them, as I said, that don't stop dripping. It's had quite a while, half an hour or more, I guess, while I've been fertling away that mouse's house up there, and it's clearly not sort of settling down, is it? It's dribbling and dribbling, and there's not much to be done about that, so we'll just wind this in. Once this face is clean, which it is, all we'll do is wipe, as we tighten this up, we'll just wipe that oil up a touch. Now, I do have the spare bung for it, as you know, a new one, and I strongly advise, if you want to, you should be using. That's not good. Why is that not? There you are. That's better. Now, this will have a torque figure as well, but seeing as I don't have a torque wrench, it's going to have earthy about it. Now, you can use a big spanner, a long spanner, but you can just get as much feel on something like this with a small one, and it shouldn't be too tight, because if you give it too much, all you'll end up doing is stripping the threads and messing about. You'll feel that rubber bite, and it's the rubber that's doing the work, so that's enough, don't give it so much. So here we are, here's the capacities. This is the 3 litre gasoline engine, 8.8 litres. In this little chap, because the oil goes off at a funny angle. Now, the correct oil from this is under warranty, as you know, and what we've used here is Castrol Edge Professional 020s, and this is the proper engine oil. It is the case, as has been pointed out on many forums by many people, that this operates the same oil as the L322 5 litre Lion engine, and inasmuch it's basically L322 oil. Now, Mobil 1's engine oil does exceed the specifications that Jaguar Land Rover lay down, and inasmuch it does technically fit the bill. What it doesn't do, and what bothers me, is that it doesn't meet. I don't know whether the JLR would test the oil in case of a catastrophic engine failure. Mobil 1 is a lot cheaper. We're in 2 now, look. Mobil 1 is a lot cheaper, it's a third of the price, but for the peace of mind of a warranty, just in case this engine decides to spit itself a leg out, I don't think you're going to get any worse than fitting the proper engine oil from JLR. The process of changing the oil using this method is far more complex and annoying than the other method I showed you last time, and that's why I said changing the Glug the easy way, and this is going to be changing the Glug the hard way. But anyway, that's 8, and then what I'll do is I'll now recommence the bolting up at the bottom while all that lot settles in, and then we'll roll it off the ramps, or roll him off the ramps, and then we can check the oil level, because as you can see there's a bit of an angle on the car here, and it's never right to check your oil when it's not level.
replacement, or at least so says the Ains manual, is the opposite of removal. Right, I've got my best hat back on now, and we're just about to get... I've dropped Finn onto the floor gently, and just double check that I haven't got any spare bolts left over on the floor, which is fairly important. Of course I've had to start him up to move him around, so there's not a lot of point in checking the oil directly, because of course some of it will be at top of engine, won't it? Now you can see I'm using the level on the side here just to figure out what we've got left. It's a litre in here, so we should have just about 200ml left over if it's 8.8. That's 250ml. And we'll leave it at that and let it settle and see where we are. Now it's interesting to know, I don't know you'll be able to see this, but can you see the bottom of that? See the bottom of that dipstick's had some pain, look. And it's got nothing to do with me, that's in the engine, so I don't know what's gone on there. Must be catching on something. That's a good 9 litres now. See if it'll focus on my finger. There we are. You see, we're still short of that crosshatch here. That's a good 9 litres. Right, we've got the right amount on the stick now, so it remains for me just to put the cap back on. I'll put that on back to front. Look, you can tell I've got OCD when I like everything line up. And job's done pretty much, really. Just make sure you put back these rubber covers. Because there's a lot of sensor stuff here, and if you don't put these back, it can be caught on the engine cover, as it were, and it can start to chafe through. These chaps, mentioned this last time, but these dudes have a habit of popping out. And I'll just spin this one round and you can see. Can you see this one's come sort of not just quite square, sort of? Just got fertile it about, because when you put them back on the little post on which they sit, they don't clip down properly if they're not held in. Right, there we go. Pop that back in there. Yeah, all good. So this is the oil sample, and that's got to go off to the Agat labs in order to be checked. But you can see that it's black, can't you? It's only been in 7,000 miles, and it should be, in a petrol engine, it should be nice and clean and fresh, and it isn't. And this is what makes me think that this 22,000 mile service interval is not good. I mean, last time I changed the oil at 5,000, it was the same colour. Or just over 5,000, it was the same colour, and that's not good either. So anyway, so to do it the hard way and to get all the engine oil out, and it might be worth mentioning that I put in 9 litres here, and I have a feeling that 8.8 litres is actually the amount you put in if you suck it out, and that actually the sump holds a little bit more than that, which is problematic in its own right, because that would suggest that then there's 200 millilitres of oil kicking about the engine that's not clean, if you see what I mean. But anyway, two metal base plates. As I mentioned in one of my earlier videos, I have been over some rocks, and there is a big ding in the rear transmission pan, but when I've had a look underneath, there's actually 2 transmission pans. There's this skid pan, and then there's a bit of that fibrous rubbish that sits in the middle, and then there's another one, and then there's another good 3 or 4 inches before you hit the gearbox filter, and so you're not going to cause any damage by dragging it over something. Everything's quite a way up, if you see what I mean. So if you do break over something and you're worried about cresting that thing, you're fine, really. You've got 2 plates there, some void in between, and you've got another 3 inches before you start hitting your gearbox, so that's good. that fibrous material actually traps in between the front plate and the back plate. So the front plate's got to go in first, or come off first. No, back plate's got to come off first, and then you get this fibrous material, and then you've got to get that front plate out. So start at the transmission one and then work forwards, if that makes sense. A rocker bolts on them, you need a 15mm. What do you need? You need a 15mm, you need a 13mm, and you need a 10mm. Plus you need 2 Torx, one Torx screwdriver, and I'll tell you what size that is now. That's a T30, so you need a T30 Torx as well. Anyway, there you go. That's that. Watch out for mouse houses in your car, because apparently that's the thing now. Like I mentioned earlier on, I am considering swapping to a D5 because, mostly because the Defender P400 is not a nice place to be in terms of driving. It's very wrong, as you've probably watched from my reviews, and I'm not the only one. One of the followers on the YouTube channel, Stephen, has reached out and he's left a fairly comprehensive message on the comments, and he's mentioned about the same sort of thing. So I'm not the only one that's noticing these sorts of driving issues and long sort of, he called it an honeymoon period. When the honeymoon period between you and the car sort of wears out a bit, you get a bit more frustrated by certain bits of things that irritate you, and that's not, well, I suppose that's the case with this Land Rover as with Finn, but it's more a case of it's been bad from the start, and there's not much I can do about it really. But I am thinking of swapping to a D5. And I'm thinking of swapping because of the engine, basically. My hesitation with moving to the D5 is only the tailgate. In fact, that's really the only thing that's stopping me, to be honest. But that's another story. So anyway, I've got a couple of little bits of things to do. I've got an incoming Rotopax mount that I'm going to put on for you. I'm going to show you how to do that. I should have a couple of things coming from Tim that we can install, and I'll show you how that goes about. I have a couple of bits of fiddly things with the Land Rover that want fixing up at Jaguar Land Rover somewhere along the line, and I will do a video on that. So that's about all we've got time for this week. Thank you very much for tuning in. Do leave comments. It's very good. I've just had a great conversation about tyres and tyre footprints, and I might do a small video on tyre footprints. I can't remember the other term for it, but about pressures and stuff like that. We had quite an interesting conversation. I do think it might be relevant to make a couple of tyre footprints. I'm going to try and put a kayak on the roof for you, so you can see how strap something up that's actually practical and not fork handles. Anyway, thanks very much for tuning in. It's been grand to have you here. Please do keep liking and subscribing to the videos if you like the content, and see you next time.